17 years. That's how long it had been since my father slammed the door in my face and told me I wasn't his daughter anymore. 17 years of silence and a wall built out of words never spoken. And then there he was, sitting 2 rows ahead of me at my brother's wedding, shoulders squared like he still owned the room. I hadn't planned on speaking to him, just show up, support my younger brother, and leave quietly before old Ghost caught up with me. But ghosts don't wait for permission. He turned just slightly, his lips curled, eyes glinting with cold steel. If it wasn't for pity, he sneered, no one would have invited you. 5 words. They cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Heads turned, whispers fluttered through the hall. But I lifted my glass of red wine, took a slow sip, and smiled. Because I already knew what was coming. The bride walked to the center of the dance floor, microphone in hand. She paused, glancing toward me. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor tonight to recognize someone who has given more to this country than most of us can imagine. Please rise and join me in welcoming Major General Davis. The room stilled, chairs scraped, feet shuffled, and one by one the guests stood. Applause thundered through the hall. My brother froze white. My father's face drained of color. You probably want to know how I got here. How the girl who once ironed her father's uniforms became the woman introduced as Major General Davis at the wedding where she wasn't supposed to matter. I grew up in a house where discipline wasn't just encouraged, it was law. My father, retired Sergeant Major Robert Davis, was a man carved out of stone and steel. He believed in rank, order, and respect, though respect only ever flowed one way. To him, sons were legacy bearers. Daughters were supposed to stand quiet at the edges. I was 10 the first time he told me I'd never wear the uniform. We were watching a parade on base. I said, Dad, I want to do that one day. He didn't even look down. Leave the uniform to men who can handle it. I didn't cry. I learned early that tears didn't buy comfort in our house. But I didn't stop dreaming. I studied his manuals when he wasn't looking, memorized rank insignia, learned to shine boots until I could see my face in them. By the time I was 17, I knew I'd apply to West Point. The night I told him, he didn't raise his voice. He just walked to the door, opened it, and said, You want to be a soldier? Fine, start by surviving without me. Get out. I packed one duffel bag and left that night. I didn't see him again for nearly 2 decades until that wedding night. Don't mistake my story for tragedy. What he intended as exile became fuel. Every mile I ran, every time an instructor said, You don't belong here, I thought of his words and answered silently, Watch me stay. Those first years nearly broke me. No family to call, no letters from home. My brother wrote once, Dad says you'll come back when you fail. I hope you don't. I kept it folded in my locker like a talisman. The academy wasn't kind. My male classmates tested me, waited for me to falter. But I didn't. I rose. One pull-up at a time. One marksmanship score at a time. I earned what no one wanted to give. My father reserved his pride for my younger brother Matthew. Every achievement, Dad clapped Matthew on the back. Me, I was the quiet shadow who ironed his dress greens and listened at the doorway while he told Matthew stories about battlefields and bravery. My mother tried to soften the edges. She was a teacher who read Emily Dickinson to me at night. Hope is the thing with feathers, she'd whisper. But when my father stepped in, hope folded its wings. When I turned 16, I won a leadership award at school. My father didn't look up from his plate. Leadership isn't learned in classrooms, and it's not for girls. 2 years later, my acceptance letter arrived. West Point. I held it out to him. Dad, I got in. He stared at the seal for 30 seconds, then dropped a manila folder on the table. Inside were applications to nursing schools, teaching programs everyone carefully filled out with my name. Pick one, he said coldly. Do something useful. Don't disgrace the family. I'm going, I said finally. That was the night he stopped seeing me as a daughter and started seeing me as a threat to his legacy. The night I left, my mother clutched the banister, eyes red. Please, Robert, she whispered. But my father stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed. You want to play soldier? Start now. Out. Those were the last words he said to me for 17 years. When I arrived at West Point, parents crowded the campus hugging their children. My spot on the bleachers sat empty. That night, alone in my bunk, I unfolded my acceptance letter just to remind myself it was real. The academy was fire, and I was forged in it. The men in my class tested me daily. Hey Davis, why don't you go back to ironing uniforms? One sneered during a field exercise. I looked him dead in the eye. I'll race you to the finish. I did, beating him by 10 minutes. Hauling not just my rucksack but a wounded teammate as well. Letters from home never came. Until one day, a thin envelope appeared from Matthew. Dad says you'll come back when you fail. I hope you don't. 7 words that kept me alive through more nights than I could count. My mother called the academy once, but I missed it during drill. Her message was short. Stay strong, sweetheart. Storms don't last forever. That was the last time I heard from her for years. By graduation, I was no longer the girl who ironed my father's uniforms. I was Second Lieutenant Davis. As the march began, I searched the crowd. My gaze snagged on an empty space where my family should have been. The ache was sharp, but it didn't crush me. I straightened my spine, saluted, and marched forward. My first deployment was supposed to be routine escorting supply convoys through Afghanistan. but war laughs at plans. Halfway through the route, the first shot cracked. Gunfire rattled from the ridges. I dove behind a container, weapon raised. Then I heard a scream, not panicked, but raw and tearing. I sprinted toward the sound. A private lay in the dirt, his leg mangled, blood pooling fast. "Stay with me," I barked. "You're not dying today." Tourniquet high on the thigh. Pressure on the wound. Gunfire roared closer. I pressed harder, my side burning from shrapnel. We dragged him 40 yards under fire. When the helicopter finally swooped low, I shoved him onto the stretcher and climbed in after him. By the time we landed, I was soaked his blood, my own seeping through hastily wrapped bandages. They wanted me on a stretcher. I refused. I walked off that bird under my own power because I knew the men were watching. That day, I earned a new nickname, Ice. They said I bled ice, not blood. The private lived. He wrote me years later, said he named his daughter Avery after me. I called home after the mission, body aching, left a message. I made it back. "I thought you should know." The call was never returned. Combat changes you in the quiet, grinding way that slips into your bones. After Afghanistan, I buried myself in work. Being a woman in uniform was like walking a tightrope over a minefield. Too soft and you were dismissed. Too tough and you were branded. There was a corporal who froze during a live fire exercise. I pulled him aside. "You're not weak, you're scared. That's different. Fear means you're paying attention. Now use it." A year later, he wrote, "Ma'am, you're the only one who ever saw me." I knew what it felt like to be invisible, to have your worth dismissed before you could show it. I wasn't going to let that happen to anyone under my watch. My reputation grew. I rose from lieutenant to captain, then major. Each milestone, I'd call home. The phone would ring until the machine picked up. My voice always sounded too small. "Dad, it's me. I just pinned captain today." No reply. But word traveled. I heard what he said, that I was making the military soft, that I was just a symbol. By then, Matthew had carved out his own path. Law school, a shiny firm in D.C. Dad bragged about him at every VFW hall. Me, I was still the exile. The call came on a gray Tuesday morning. Matthew's voice was flat. "Mom's in hospice. Breast cancer. She doesn't have long." I booked the first flight home. When I walked into the room, my mother lay small and pale. My father stood in the corner, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. He didn't move when I entered. Her hand lifted weakly. I rushed to her side. She smiled faintly. "Keep flying," she whispered. She was gone before sunrise. At the funeral, I wore dress blues. My father didn't look at me, not once. Afterward, I waited for a letter, a call. What came was an email, 3 sentences. "The funeral was nice. I hope the army is treating you well. I still don't understand your decision." I closed the laptop and went back to work. The promotions came. Lieutenant colonel, colonel. Each new rank should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like markers in a marathon I was running alone. I mailed him a picture of me after being awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. No reply. Later, I heard he'd torn the picture in half. Still, I kept climbing. I rewrote protocols, pushed through new resilience programs, demanded better safety measures. It wasn't glamorous, but it saved lives. And slowly, genuine respect followed, the kind you can see in the eyes of the people you lead. By the time I reached Brigadier General, I thought nothing could surprise me. But hope is stubborn. When the orders came through, I sent him a handwritten letter. "Dad, I took your lessons. Discipline, honor, responsibility. I've carried those into every command. Today, I was promoted to Brigadier General. I hope somewhere inside you know I've done right by the uniform." 2 weeks later, I heard from one of his old army friends. Dad had read my letter 3 times, then tore it in half. That was the moment I stopped writing. If he wanted silence, then silence he would have. Around that time, Matthew announced his engagement. "I want you there," he said carefully. "Does Dad know?" "He does." "He's not thrilled. But this isn't about him. You're my sister. Please come." 17 years had passed since he told me to get out. But this was my brother. I said yes. When the day came, I slipped into my dress uniform. The medals glinted against my chest. 4 stars gleamed on my shoulder. I whispered to myself, "This is who you are. A general." The wedding was beautiful. And then I saw him older, grayer, but his posture just as rigid. He turned, voice low. "If it wasn't for pity, no one would have invited you." 17 years and nothing had changed. I lifted my wine glass, took a slow sip, and smiled. Because this time, I knew something he DI'd in single quotes, till the music softened. The bride walked to the center of the dance floor, microphone in hand. "Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment. I want to acknowledge someone whose sacrifice and service have shaped not just this family, but this nation." She turned toward me. "Please rise and join me in honoring Major General Davis." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then chairs scraped back. People stood. Applause swelled, rolling like thunder. My father's mouth was tight, his knuckles white. He didn't move, didn't stand. His pride chained him to his chair, while everyone else rose to their feet. I finally stood, slow and deliberate. My heels clicked against the floor. "Thank you," I said, voice clear but calm. The ovation went on, long enough that people glanced toward my father, waiting for him to rise. He never did. Revenge didn't come in anger or shouting. It came when an entire room stood for me while he sat alone. Blood didn't stand, but honor did. People approached me, thanking me for my service, sharing stories. All the while, I felt the empty gravity of his silence behind me. Matthew came over. "You okay?" I nodded. "You deserve that. Every bit of it." My father left quietly. No goodbye, just a rigid back slipping into the shadows. I thought it would sting more, but I felt lighter. His silence was his burden, not mine. Weeks later, a letter arrived at my office. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. I didn't stand because I didn't know how. "I don't understand what you've become, but I know it's more than I ever gave you credit for. If you'll allow it, I'd like to talk. Not as soldiers, not as ranks, just as father and daughter." I read it 3 times. That night, I told my husband about it. "Do you want to see him?" "I don't know. I don't owe him anything." "No," he said, "but maybe you owe yourself the choice." A month later, I met him at Arlington, at my mother's grave. He wore civilian clothes. He looked smaller, older. We talked quietly about regrets, about silence, about how absence becomes its own kind of cruelty. When we parted, he straightened slowly and raised his hand in a salute. Not sharp, not perfect, but earnest. I returned it, not because he had earned forgiveness, but because he had finally chosen truth. The years that followed brought new commands, but I carried that moment with me not as vindication, but as proof that even the hardest walls can crack. One day, a young lieutenant asked me what the most important lesson of my career had been. I told her, "Respect isn't inherited. It isn't given by blood. It's earned by showing up, by standing up, and by never letting silence define you. Who stood for you when no one else did? When did you rise above what was meant to break you?" If you've carried silence, rejection, or doubt, I hope you find the moment when the world finally stands for you, because it will. And when it does, you'll know that some salutes come from blood, but the ones that matter come from those who choose to stand. And those are the salutes that last forever.